All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the some technical difficulties this morning, but we are going to go ahead and get started. All right. So thank you all for joining the 2026 Community Garden Grant Informational Webinar. My name is Kalia Henry. I'm the Grants and Resources Manager with Foodwell Alliance, and I manage our community garden program, or community garden grants program. So today we're going to just be talking about this grant opportunity, Foodwell Alliance in general, and some general tips on applications and with the grant system itself. There is a Q&A function turned on for this webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, and I should be able to see those. I can't see them as I'm presenting, but I will definitely jump in at the end for a Q&A portion if anyone does have any questions. All right, so we will kick it off with an overview of Foodwell Alliance. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Foodwell Alliance already, but in case you are not, we are a network of local leaders working together to build a thriving food system in Metro Atlanta. So our main mission is to provide resources and support to local growers. So some of the ways that we do that, we have a range of resource center offerings. So these grants are a big one. So we offer an annual community garden and an annual farm grant. We also offer ongoing resources throughout the year. So the special project labor support is one of the resources that we offer that I'll talk about a little bit later, but that helps cover labor costs for projects at gardens and farms. We also have a pretty robust volunteer program. So we have a volunteer coordinator who brings out groups of different gardens for special projects, as well as just regular work days. We have ongoing training and workshop opportunities. Those go year round. We have our Plan It Repeat series, as well as one-off projects or one-off workshops. We also do annual events like our fruit tree sale and our soil festival, where we do workshops. We have a program called the Orchard Project, where we do fruit tree plantings at community gardens and at schools throughout the greater Metro Atlanta area. So that actually expands beyond our 5-county reach. We also do compost deliveries, and those will kick off beginning of 2026. So definitely keep an eye out for those. We also have tool mechanical assistance resources. So we have a partnership with the Atlanta Community Tool Bank, where community gardens and farms can rent specialized tools for work days. If you have a large work day and you need 15 shovels that the garden maybe doesn't have, those can be rented, as well as more specialized equipment like a BCS walk-behind tractor. We also have community garden planning and troubleshooting resources. So the Resource Center team, we're always happy to help, if gardens have questions or, need advice on certain projects. Here is a map of our service area. So we serve the 5-county metro area. This is a map of all of the growers that have been served since 2015. So this includes gardens, farms, and orchards. So you can see there's a pretty wide spread across our entire service area. All right, so the community garden grants. We are continuing to do the two categories of support as we have for the past, I think it's been about 3 years now. So this grant opportunity, the goal of the idea was to provide community gardens with direct funding to help support their operations or their expansion. So they can be used for garden infrastructure improvements, for supplies, for materials, for additional compost. The two categories that we have, so we have our farm support grant, which is a $1,500 funding opportunity. And then we have our larger Garden Forward grant, which is a $10,000 funding opportunity. And I'll go through those specific grant opportunities in a little bit and talk more about the differences. But these are available to all active community gardens located in Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, Gwinnett, or Clayton counties. And applications opened on Monday, so they were open on the 13th. and they will be open until November 23rd at 11:59. So special project labor support is another resource that I mentioned a bit earlier, but it can be paired with our grant funds or not. It's also available year round. These funds are specifically to cover labor costs for projects, infrastructure improvement projects at gardens. So if you get a grant for a shed or you get a grant for irrigation installation, and you use those grant funds to purchase the materials, to purchase the drip tape, to purchase the actual shed, that can be paired with our special project labor support program to cover the costs for the contractor that you would need to bring out to actually do the installation. So that's a separate application and something that can definitely be a conversation if you are awarded a grant. But it is something to keep in mind as you're working on your grant application, so that when you're building out your budget, you don't necessarily need to build in the cost of, we'll use the irrigation, for example. If your main project is we want to, put in irrigation in all of our raised beds and we're building out that budget, your budget would really only need to include the cost of the materials themselves, the drip tape and the meters and all of that. And then the cost of bringing the plumber out to actually install that, or to bring out, whatever contractor you're using, can be listed separately in this special project labor support application. All right, so general eligibility requirements for the community garden grant. This is true for pretty much all the Food Well Alliance resources that community gardens can apply for. So like I mentioned, you have to be located within our 5-county service area. So Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, Gwinnett, or Clayton counties. Your garden must regularly involve at least 5 individual household members. I know that seems like it could be maybe a bit confusing, but you basically you want at least 5 people that are from different households. So not like a family of 5 that maybe you say you have 5 members, but it's really just a backyard garden that's where you have multiple family members growing. That wouldn't necessarily be eligible. But if you have 5 members total, but they're all, they all live in different households and they're not related, that would be considered eligible. So the types of gardens that are eligible to apply, something that's really great about community gardens is that they have so many different management structures, and they all look different. So really, we try to keep this pretty broad. So you can be a community garden operated by a group of neighbors or community members. I think that's kind of the standard community garden model. If you are just, a group of neighbors, most of the time you don't have your own financial management, you don't have your own bank account and things like that. So you would need to identify a fiscal sponsor, which I'll talk about in a little bit. They can also be community gardens that are registered as a tax-exempt nonprofit and can receive funds themselves, or a community garden that's associated with a tax-exempt nonprofit. So if it's a garden that's growing food as part of their operation or part of their nonprofit food distributions, that would be eligible. The other option would be a community garden that's affiliated with a public agency or institution. So if you're affiliated with, a university, or you're affiliated with an extension agency, those are eligible as well. One thing that we really want to highlight is that if you are a prior recipient, so you received funds in the 2025 cycle, you must submit your final report to be eligible to reapply. So that's something we really want to encourage everyone to, kind of close the loop on these grants and make sure that they're submitting their final reports. They're not super, super complicated. They don't require super detailed receipts or financial tracking in that way. We mostly just want to hear about how the grant went, how the funds were used, how it benefited your garden, just to make sure that we, have that clear line of communication with recipients. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as you're working on your applications. So one thing that we highlighted on this page is you must be an existing community garden. So I know that can be a bit ambiguous, but you basically need to meet the following criteria to be considered an existing community garden. So if you have a garden that's built out and you have installed garden infrastructure and you have those, the 5 individual household members, that would be considered an existing community garden. You need to have a current documented land use agreement in place. So, permission to grow where you're growing, basically. And then you must have, engaged your surrounding community. So if you are a garden that maybe doesn't have the infrastructure built out, but you have that documented land use agreement and you have the buy-in from 5 household members and you're looking to establish that garden infrastructure, there is the potential to be eligible. So if you have any questions on your eligibility or you feel like you're maybe in a gray area, you can definitely reach out to me and we can talk through that. So another question we really want gardeners to ask before they start this application or before they submit the application is, are we, ready to accept and use funds? So do we have our fiscal sponsor identified? Do we have our budget outlined? I'm going to go ahead and jump to the third bullet, but do we have identified needs or challenges of the garden that we need to address? So do we have I talked to the other garden members? Do we have an idea of how we want to use these funds and how they will best benefit the garden? And have we, kind of worked backwards and made a budget on how we could meet these needs? And then another question is, are we ready to manage and implement the grant? So do we have garden members identified that are willing to, serve the kind of project management role? Are they, willing to make the purchases of the materials and talk with the contractors or lead the volunteer work days or whatever is involved in the grant implementation? Okay, so I'm going to get into the kind of nitty gritty of the 2 different grant opportunities now. So as I mentioned, we have our garden support grant, which is a $1,500 category. And then we have our garden forward grant, which is a $10,000 category. So the garden support grant, the $1,500 category, we are hoping to award 75 gardens this year. And these proposals can include things like garden infrastructure, additional tools. You want to replace your shovels, your rakes. You want to purchase additional supplies or materials, seedlings, seeds, soil amendments, things like that. You want to purchase additional compost. So as I mentioned, Foodwell Alliance does do an annual compost distribution to gardens. That's 2 of the cubic yard bags from Soil 3 typically. So that would be 2 cubic yards delivered to each garden. But especially if gardens are looking to do a large expansion or they're looking to build new beds, sometimes they need more than those 2 cubic yards. So we've definitely had gardens use the grant funds towards purchasing additional compost. And I put et cetera on there because I know that other projects come up and people are creative. And so I don't want to make it sound like that as a comprehensive list, but there is definitely a range of uses for these funds within that garden support grant category. And then our larger grant category, the Garden Forward grant, is a $10,000 grant opportunity. Only 2 gardens will be awarded that grant. And the idea of this grant opportunity is that, this is for gardens that are ready to take on a bigger project and move their operation forward. So, they want to do a really large garden expansion, or they're hoping to build a structure, a greenhouse, or they're looking to build a really large scale irrigation, or like the picture on the side here, like a big water catchment system. There's really this is another one where people can get very creative, but um, we really want these applications to be project focused. So I know that, you know, most gardens could come up with a list of $10,000 worth of tools or random materials that they could use at the garden. Um, and that's, that is an option, but we're really, for a really compelling grant application, we want it to be really project focused and centered on one particular infrastructure improvement. And, if that only costs, $8,000 and you want to list within your budget for the remaining 2,000 what you would have put in your garden support grant application for, compost or tools or seedlings or anything like that, that's totally fine as well. So here are some examples of community garden grant recipients and some projects that people have implemented. So up here on the top left, you see like all new cedar beds. So a large garden bed expansion. A lot of gardens are purchasing the taller corrugated metal beds, wanting to replace their wooden beds with something a little more permanent, like those cinder block beds in the bottom left, or the corrugated metal beds up at the top. Cold storage is another option. If you are, producing a lot, and maybe you are a nonprofit that's doing food distributions and people aren't taking the produce home every day, that could be an option. Equipment, so purchasing a lawnmower or purchasing a weed eater, things like that. The soil 3 bag at the top right is what I was referencing earlier. That's a 1 cubic yard bag of compost. So if you wanted to purchase additional compost with that. And then down there at the bottom right, we have an example of more of a community, maybe not directly related to the actual growing of food, but kind of meeting the needs of the community aspect. So a bulletin board for gardeners to be able to, post opportunities and workshops and things like that would be considered an eligible project. Okay, so here's just an overview of the timeline that I've mentioned a couple times. So as I said, applications opened on Monday, 13th. Today's the 15th, so we're doing the webinar, and this webinar is recorded and will be uploaded on the website. So if you had garden members that were not present and you wanted to share it with them, you can definitely do that. The application deadline will be on November 23rd. And then we will begin the process of reviews with our internal and external review committees. And then late January 30th is kind of our target. We're hoping to make those grant decisions and announcements and begin fund distribution. And then in fall of 2026, late November, that'll be when the final reports are due. And you can check all this out at I put the website link down there, but it's just foodwellalliance.org/garden-grants. And that has more information, and that is where the recorded webinar will be linked as well. Okay, so now we're going to go through the technical part of the actual application. So we use an online grant system called Foundant, and both categories of grant are in one application. So you can choose to apply for one or both in that same application. You don't have to, start a bunch of different applications, and trying to keep it as streamlined as possible. And then just going to say that due date one more time, November 23rd at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so this is the grant portal. So the link is on our website, and it'll take you straight to this portal. You can log in with an existing account. If you are going to create a new account, I ask that if you know that your community garden already exists as an organization in the grant system, so that they've applied previous years or been granted, and you're just a new member, or you're the new president or whatever, you're making a new account for that organization. I'd ask that you reach out to me so that I can add you specifically on that existing organization. Sometimes we have people come in and they'll create a whole new organization. So we get duplicates in the system, and it can be a bit confusing. So, if you need to make a new personal account, but you know that the organization exists already, just reach out to me. I can add you as a contact on that organization, and it's pretty simple. And I will send you your login and all of that. Once you log in, this system's really nice because it only shows the opportunities available through Foodwell Alliance. So it's not a confusing grant portal where you have to look us up or anything. It'll just show the community garden grant application, because that's the only one that's open right now. So it'll take you straight to this. This will be your homepage. And if you're listed on an organization, you want to look at the previous applications, you can go up to this, the organization history button at the top, and you can see prior applications. But if you just go to this homepage, it'll only show the current application. So you will just click that apply button, and it will pull up the grant application. So the application itself is pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure that you're filling out all of the different questions. When you go, so this is what I was talking about, where both grant opportunities are listed in the same application. So the community garden improvement grant request, so that is the $1,500 category, that top one. And then the garden forward grant request is the $10,000 grant opportunity. And when you click the little drop down arrow, it'll give you a lot more detail about which one you're applying for. So it's very clear. But you can fill out one or both of these. You won't be awarded both of them. So everyone will only be awarded one of the two. But it doesn't hurt your chances if you apply for both. Everyone's considered the same. So don't feel like if you want the $10,000 grant that applying for the $1,500 in addition is going to hurt your chances at all. I would recommend that everyone applies for the $1,500 one, even if you are hoping for the $10,000 one, just in case. But if you do choose to apply for both, just one or both, just make sure you're filling out every line in that application so that we get all the information we need. So fiscal sponsors. So I mentioned that earlier. So a fiscal sponsor is a tax-exempt organization that agrees to accept, receive, and disperse the grant funds on a garden's behalf if your garden is not set up to accept funds. So if your garden doesn't have a bank account where the funds are managed, and it's more that a tax-exempt bank account, and it's more individuals, buying materials and things like that, then you will need to identify a fiscal sponsor. And fiscal sponsors can be, public entities like an extension agency. They can be local churches, local community organizations. If you're located in a park, there are organizations like Park Pride, or a lot of the Friends of groups can function as fiscal sponsors. But you want to make sure that if you are using a fiscal sponsor, that you identify them before you submit your application. So this fiscal sponsorship agreement form is linked on the application. You can download it. And then this is what the application looks like. But there is a specific, it'll ask the specific questions of who is your fiscal sponsor? What is their primary contact? What is their tax ID number? Do you have a signed agreement form where you've had that conversation? They've agreed to be your fiscal sponsor. They've signed the form right here where they've listed, their tax ID number and everything. So just make sure that you are having that conversation early, and that you get all of that sorted out before you submit your application. And the reason we do that is so that we don't get into a situation in February where you were awarded funds, but we don't know where to send them. We want to make sure that those conversations are had very early. So definitely you can, the blue line where it says, please click here to download this form. Like I said, this is on the application in the grant system. You can download that form and have that conversation with your fiscal sponsor. If you have questions about that or issues identifying a fiscal sponsor, please reach out to me and I can give you some recommendations and hopefully point you in the right direction. One other feature I wanted to highlight, because I don't think it's really been utilized in previous years, is the collaboration feature. So if you are the primary applicant for a garden, but you have other garden members that maybe want to work on the application with you, like in the same way that you would do on like a Google Doc, you can do that in the grant system. So the way you would do that is on the left here, you see the application page. There's that collaborate button. It'll be in the very top right of your page, and it's highlighted in black. And when you click on that, you'll see this little pop-up window that's over on the right, and you can invite a garden member to help work on your application. And you can choose the permissions. So if you want to just invite someone and select that can view button, you just want them to be able to look over it before you submit it. You could do that. Or if you want them to be able to have edit permissions where they can go in and, type specifically what they, type specifically what they have to contribute to the grant application, they can do that. Or you can go as far as to say that they can submit the application. So if they say you have like you're part of a nonprofit and someone from that nonprofit wants to be able to look over the application and be the one to hit the final submit button, you can have that as an option as well. Okay, so some general application tips. I would recommend using the application to help us get to know your community garden. So really try to give a full picture of the current state of your garden. So I know there are plenty of gardens that we've, Foodwell's had a relationship with for years and years. And, we've seen it in a bunch of different iterations, but we really want to get an idea of what the current membership, current goals, current visions of the garden are. So try to make it like a well-rounded story of what your garden is currently. Definitely be clear on how you intend to use the funds to help with the top needs of the garden. So I definitely encourage having a conversation with your garden members and garden leadership to set some strategic goals for the garden and, what may be some of the challenges that you're facing and how you could use grant funds to improve those. We want everyone to be really realistic and clear in your request. So make sure it's something that you can achieve within the time frame. So I know it's technically a year, but it ends up being, funds go out in February and then reports are due in November. So it is, less than 12 months to actually implement a grant. And we ask that grants are usually implemented by end of October. So you want to make sure you can get things done on that timeline and that, the funding available is going to be able to make all the purchases that you need for that project. Definitely, this is one that I'm definitely going to emphasize is give yourself time to understand how to navigate the application. So I would log in today and get familiar with the Found and Grant system. So then if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to us and I can help you get, oriented on the grant system and make sure that you are in the right place. And then the last one is something that is required on all applications is 3 community garden pictures. So we really want those pictures to be a full picture of the garden. So we want to see all the beds and we want to see, the scale of the garden. We do site visits in January to, visit some of the gardens that we haven't met before or haven't been to in a while. But it is really, really helpful for the grant reviewers if there are really good pictures of the whole garden and not just, a close-up of, oh, this was our harvest 2 years ago. It's more like, here's the current layout of the garden, the current beds. This is where we want to build the wash station, or this is where we want to build, the shed or, things like that. I just pictures that actually, highlight the projects you want to complete and highlight the way the garden looks currently. Okay, so feel free to screenshot this page. This is kind of a checklist and next steps for everyone that I would recommend. So like I said, get on the grant system today and get signed up. If you do have any questions about, like I said, if your garden already exists in the system and you just need to be added to that existing garden, shoot me an email and I can get you set up very easily. And then get familiar with the application. Make sure that you know all the questions. If there are any conversations you need to have with garden members, that you can have those conversations, that you have time to do that. And like I said, discuss with the gardeners and see how the grant could help address some of the current challenges of the garden or current goals for expansion. And based on those goals, decide if you are going to apply for the garden support grant or the garden forward grant, or if you want to go ahead and fill out applications for both. Like I said, if you're going to apply for the $10,000 one, I always recommend filling out the $1,500 grant application as well, just in case. Have those fiscal sponsor conversations, make sure that you have a fiscal sponsor identified and that the agreement form is filled out, and then submit your application by the 23rd, if not before. One thing I mentioned earlier that I just want everyone to be aware of is we do have an external review committee. So we do have food well staff members that will look over these grant applications, but we bring in some other people in the movement and people in the community garden space to help with scoring applications and doing that review so that we are sure that we get, a full picture from food well team and beyond. One more time, I'm going to say that due date is November 23rd at 11:59. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to me before 11:58 on the 23rd. And okay, I'm going to stop sharing and check out the Q&A. All right. So do the individual household members need to live in the 5 counties also? Not necessarily. So if you, you're right on that, Henry County border and, garden members live outside the service area, but the physical garden is located inside the service area, that's totally fine. So as long as the garden itself is located in our service area, everyone is all set. Would an apiary project be a project-focused consideration? Yeah, an apiary could definitely be a project. If the community garden is a 501c3, do we still need to identify and fill out the fiscal sponsor document? No, you are all set. So if the community garden itself can receive those funds as a 501c3, basically with the community garden grant, we just can't send them out to an individual. So when you're awarded the grant, we just want to make sure we're not, just sending it to your president. We want to make sure that we're sending it to the garden entity itself or to a fiscal sponsor. Can one of the pictures be a design of what we want the garden to look like in the future? Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's paired with a picture of the current garden, that would be great. If we don't have a community garden, but we as an organization grow food just to donate to food banks, can we get a grant? It kind of depends on the structure. So if you are part of an organization where, maybe people don't have individual beds, but the goal is for the entire garden to just be grown to donate, that would be eligible as long as you have those at least 5 people that are involved in the growing of that food. And that can be, I know if it's more volunteer based, we can definitely offline about that if you want to send me an email and tell me a little bit more about your organization. But yeah, I know there can kind of be some gray area with organizations that are growing just for donation and are functioning more on a volunteer basis. If our greenhouse costs more than the grant is more than the grant is offering, can we still apply? Yeah. So as long as I would recommend listing the it's not necessarily like you don't have to like provide a match or anything, but we would definitely want to hear where the rest of the funds are coming from and if you have those secured already. But there are definitely instances where gardens will use food well funds to supplement a project, and even if it's not for full completion. So one thing I would recommend to if you are a garden in a City of Atlanta park, um, Park Pride does small change grants that gardens, I think they're up to $2,500 that gardens can access, and they do require a match. So they can be the Food Well Alliance $1,500 grant can be used as the match towards the Park Pride small change grants. So if you had a $3,000 project and you wanted to, half of it come from Park Pride grant and then Food Well Alliance $1,500 grant is that match. That is definitely an option. All right, I'm gonna give another minute for anyone to ask any more questions. I think that I've covered all the ones that are currently in the chat. Okay, not seeing any more. So, like I said, if you have any questions at all, you can contact me at Kalia at foodwellalliance.org. And this was all recorded, and I will be uploading it to the website. So if you want to share it with any garden members, feel free to do so. But thank you guys so much for joining us, and good luck. And yeah, feel free to give me an email or a call with any questions at all. All right, y'all have a good one.